Hello, so we are back with the D-List podcast here at Climb23 in Leeds. So I am joined by Alison Lowe, who is the Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime in West Yorkshire. So super excited for this podcast and for this interview. So Mel, the founder of D-List, has told me lots about you, Alison.
Oh.
So all good things. So we're going to talk a little bit more about your journey and your kind of involvement with the D-List. So Alison, you have such an interesting job. So take us back to the start. How did you arrive as Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime at West Yorkshire Combined Authority?
So it feels like all the different things that I've done prior to this job led me to this job, because actually I didn't apply for this. I wouldn't have applied for this. It was a phone call from Tracy Brabin, and she said, this is your lived experience, this is your work experience, you are the perfect and unique candidate for this job. And I agreed with her, and thus I said yes. And what she meant by that is for 29 years, I was a Leeds City Councillor, so I was a politician. I have political experience, which is very necessary for this role. But during those 29 years, I was involved in policing governance and scrutiny for around 20 of those years. So I was on the police authority, on and off for about 10-15 years. I chaired the Macpherson Steering Group. So the Macpherson Steering Group came around as a result of the murder of Stephen Lawrence, and the Macpherson said that policing was institutionally racist, and I was responsible for beginning the process of policing, getting out of that situation. I don't think we have got out of it personally. I think we're still there. Another question maybe later on. And then later there were some changes to the law in relation to police authorities. They were disbanded, and police and crime commissioners were elected from 2012, and then I became a member of the Police and Crime panel that held the Police and Crime Commissioner to account, and then a year after that I became the chair, so I was the chair for 5 years, and we together, there were 14 of us across political persuasion and independence, and we held Mark Burns-Williamson to account. So I've got a lot of policing experience, but Tracy also liked the fact that I knew local government, I knew the leaders, I knew how local government worked. I knew about mental health because I was the chief exec of a charity called Touchstone for 17 and a half years. And mental health is a huge part of policing, not just because policing is a really tough job and police officers experience mental distress. They will have between 200 and 300 traumas. They'll witness 200 to 300 traumas in their careers. Most of us in our lives, it's 2 or 3. Yeah. But for them, it's 200 or 300 and possibly more. But also many calls for service as a result of mental health concerns, problems that exist within the wider community. I'm black, which Tracy was keen to impress upon me was an asset for her. It's an asset for me. I believe that that's important, especially for those communities for whom policing has never really felt part of their community. You know, we've not felt safe from policing for generations. And also, I'm a woman with lived experience. I was sexually abused as a child, and I lived with domestic abuse for 10 years. And so I've got that lived experience. And when Tracy told me that her passion was eliminating violence against women and girls, I knew I had something to bring to the table in relation to bringing other women on board and giving that lived experience as evidence of my credibility with those women, and the fact that I won't let them down. You know, my integrity is a huge thing for me, and I'm not going to look women in the eye and say, I'm here for you, I'm going to fight for you. I'm here for everybody, you know, all 2.3 million people that live in West Yorkshire, man, woman or child, non-binary and trans people too, of course. But I do passionately understand that for women and girls, policing feels differently, and the impact of violence on us is lifelong.
That's so important. That's so important. Gosh, just hearing your experience, I can see. I think if I was Tracy, I'd make that call as well. I'd say, "This is it. This is made for you." How fantastic! And so I think that kind of title, you know, when I first kind of read it, which was like this kind of deputy mayor for police and crime. Can you tell us a little bit more what that looks like? I guess on the day to day, what does your day to? I'm guessing no 2 days the same, but if you can, if you can try and tell us what an average day to day or a week to week might look like.
So generally, my job is to work with West Yorkshire Police to deliver an efficient and effective police service for the people of West Yorkshire, to reduce crime, hopefully prevent crime from happening using our commissioning and the initiatives, the services that we commission, but also to create with the Mayor a police and crime plan that outlines the priorities of the people of West Yorkshire. So that is a document that was co-produced with the people of West Yorkshire back in 2021, and the police have to account to us for their performance against the priorities within that plan. And so that's effectively what I do. But I've also got a massive engagement role. So I go out into communities, I find out what people's concerns are, what their priorities are, and I'm constantly feeding that back both to the Mayor but also into policing so that they understand what the experience of policing is, but what the experience of crime is too. So when the police are saying, oh, this is the reality, I can say, no, that's not the reality for X, Y or Z community, this is the reality. And by pushing back in that way, maybe we get a different policy, maybe we get a different response. So for example, I was approached by a Bradford-based charity, Racial Justice Network, who were saying to me that the practice by West Yorkshire of taking fingerprints by the roadside of people they were stopping in cars and then sending some of those fingerprints off to the National Home Office database was racist and was creating conflict with police and loss of trust and confidence with police amongst some communities. And so I was able to feed that back effectively to West Yorkshire Police, and we've created a policy, a framework around that that's got check and challenge embedded. So police can't just randomly stop somebody at the roadside under Section 163 traffic stops and take their fingerprints and send them off to the Home Office, because we know that they were doing that for black people. We know that they were doing that for asylum seekers and refugees. And the perception of those people is that the police is racist. I was able to help the police to understand that, and now they've put a framework in place. A chief inspector has to sign off a decision to send those fingerprints to the Home Office, and there's a properly governed process. And I've just asked for the report. I've said, right, that's 12 months. I now want a paper telling me how many times you've taken those fingerprints and how many times you've sent them to the Home Office, and I want to know the demographics of the people that you've sent to the Home Office. So I can do that because I know what the concerns of ordinary people are. But West Yorkshire Police, they were not really conscious of the way that was perceived by black and brown people, and particularly people who come here as refugees.
Amazing. So it seems like in large part, basically, you're a bit of a conduit between kind of the police forces and those kind of communities, basically. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess that, you know, you've kind of already explained, but you inhibit quite a unique role being a black woman as well. Were there any assumptions when you came into that role, and has anything changed basically from when you started inhabiting it, basically?
So I think that a few people were worried, a bit scared about, angry black woman. And I am an angry black woman, but, the perception of me or other black women as angry and, aggressive, in inverted commas, and the reality of actually I'm a passionate woman who cares about my communities, all the communities of West Yorkshire. But also, I've got 30 years experience of leadership. I've been a senior councillor. I've been a chief exec of an organisation. I occupy many senior roles. I've got an OBE. I'm an honorary doctorate from Leeds University. I've got 2 degrees. I am in the same spaces that white women of my age are, and I know how to behave. I know how to influence. And I think that I've surprised not just the police but other partners about how I operate. I want to be part of the solution, and I think if you're going with a big stick, you create more problems than solutions, and I want to get to a solution. So my the way that I comport myself, is with passion, always. My values are important to me. That's who I am, and I want people to understand that I'm a values-based person, and I will always fight for the things that I believe in. But I know that by using facts, using evidence, using the lived experience, not just of me, but of other people, and linking that in with the ambitions of policing and the wider criminal justice system, their priorities, being able to speak a common language, being fair, transparent, open, listening as well as talking, because they have got things that that inhibit them in their decision making. They've got the financial pressures. They've got systems that are going to take a long time to change. So I have to listen as well to the things that mean that change is coming, but it might not be as fast as I want it to be. And I think by being the leader that I am and being the influencer and the negotiator that I am, I've been able to change hearts and minds and get the changes that we in West Yorkshire desperately need.
That's so fantastic as well. And I guess when you first took on the role, did you have any, I guess not kind of prerequisites, but I always think when you're in an organisation, you might personally have an assumption of, I think it's going to be this way, and we're going to handle it. And then you get in there and you go, oh my gosh, this is actually totally different to what I thought it was going to be. And sometimes you might go in thinking you're going to fix a mess, and then you go in, it's actually a lot more complex than what you realise. Or you might go in thinking, do you know what this is going to be? I've got a plan, and you go in and it's completely different. Did you kind of have that going into the role initially?
Not initially, because I've been involved in policing for so many years, but I go in with my own map of the world, and I go in with my own assumptions. So just last week, I met the police to go through the body-worn video of an incident that had happened in a part of West Yorkshire where it appeared that policing had been overusing force on a person from BME heritage in a particular part of West Yorkshire. And I went in thinking they're going to try and gaslight me. I can see what I can see. There is no explanation that will satisfy me. I want to know why the officers involved are not going through a disciplinary process. And that's how I went into that meeting. I was wrong. Because they were able to show me two videos from two perspectives. They were able to give me the information about how they'd got to that scene in the first place, the intelligence that had got them to that scene, the concerns of the public that had been raised that had got them there. They were able to show me the logs that had been completed real time by various different parties, including NPAS, which is the National Police Air Service. So there was a helicopter out. There were so many different eyes on what had happened, other than just the eyes of that one camera that I had seen on WhatsApp. And it was clear to me that there was a much bigger picture than the sliver that I had seen. And I went in there believing that I was going to get gaslit and that it was, clearly one thing. And actually I left that meeting feeling a bit humbled because the decision not to take any further action was the right decision. And I then went back to the community and said, I stand by West Yorkshire Police. Given the information that I've got, given the evidence that I've seen, I am satisfied that this was not overuse of police force, this was not racist, this was policing that happened because of the circumstance, because of the bad behaviour of some people, and they did what had to be done to keep us safe.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I guess, it's nice that you're able to go back to those communities and be able to confidently say that. I guess just building on that, do you ever feel any pressure, I would say, as a black woman when you're kind of talking about these communities and you are having to sometimes, take what is maybe the correct stance, but quite a hard stance where, I think with policing, there's always emotions that are so high and maybe fraught with those kind of different communities and the policing force. And being that conduit, I can imagine it's useful, but I can also imagine it's quite difficult sometimes.
Absolutely. There are some people who don't want to hear. There are some people whose lived experience is... it's theirs, it's real, and for them, they're in that space and they don't want to come out of it, or they can't come out of it because the trauma of what they've experienced is so debilitating that they're not able to move out of that space. But I've got to be, and I've had negative experiences with West Yorkshire Police and other forces. I have had those negative experiences, which I know are part of my lens. But I've also got to recognise that the force is changing every day, that new people are coming in, that the leadership, we have excellent leadership in West Yorkshire. Our Chief Constable John Robbins really wants to have a fair, just and inclusive force, which is the strapline from our mayor, which he has adopted. He is part of the solution, and white people are part of the solution. This is not just about black people are right and white people are wrong. You know, this is about people, and you know, I think if you get a group of people with the same values and the same passion for justice and fairness, who want to do the right thing, who are prepared to learn from their mistakes, to listen to each other as well as speak, because we're all good at that, aren't we? Then I think we can achieve the change that needs to be made. But it is incremental change.
Yeah.
You know, West Yorkshire Police has 10,500 police officers and staff. The Met has 45,000 police officers and staff. Most police officers have a career of 30 years. That's when most people get the pension after 30 years. Some stay a bit longer. And so even when you've got a load of new people with fresh ideas who don't think that there's anything wrong with trans or non-binary people, and very open to queer people and very open to difference in all its manifestations, you've still got some officers who have been there for 25, 26, 27 years, and their thoughts might not be as modern as the thoughts of some of the newer officers, although don't get me wrong, there are some new officers whose behaviours and belief systems are incongruous with a modern 21st century police force, and some older officers who are absolutely part of the solution. So let's not make massive generalisations about age, but obviously we've got a complex picture here in West Yorkshire. But I do believe that West Yorkshire Police is alive to the complexity of the communities of West Yorkshire. They want to be seen to be fair, just and inclusive, and I feel really confident about putting that lens to the people that you know, I'm here to serve, and that's every person. So whether that person's a black person or a black group, if I go to Chapeltown, or if I go to Fartown in Huddersfield, or I go to Manningham in Bradford, I've just been to Halifax today, to Gibbet Street, you know, where there's high numbers of BME people live. I will listen to their concerns. I will investigate, not personally, but you know, we've got a process for investigating their concerns. But if I don't believe that West Yorkshire Police is in the wrong, I will confidently say that using facts, using evidence, knowing that I have checked that out for myself, that I'm not relying on some third party telling me, oh no, that's not the case, it's this. I will have checked that out for myself. I've got all sorts of situations where I triangulate, I talk to the Black Police Association, I talk to the LGBT police network, I talk to individual police officers. I have got a huge network that I'm able to speak to and say, this has come up, what do you think? I talk to IOPC, the Independent Office of Police Complaints. I talk to His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary. I reach out as far and wide as I can to check in. West Yorkshire Police have told me this. What's your lived experience? What are you telling me? And if it stacks up, great. And if it doesn't stack up, I put that back to West Yorkshire Police and say, it's funny you should say that, because X has just told me entirely the opposite, which is true. How do I check that that's true? You're telling me that? I can't trust it on its own. I need corroboration. I need triangulation of that. And that's where I will be when I'm telling that person in front of me, I trust West Yorkshire Police. I believe that they've done the right thing. Or not, because I have said, I don't think West Yorkshire Police are right here. I don't believe that policy or that practice is right. When it came to the fingerprints, that didn't sit comfortable with me. And I fought for a year to get those protocols in place. And what West Yorkshire Police were saying to me is that in some circumstances, if that person in front of us has been trafficked, we need to check with the Home Office that that person is not on a list somewhere, having been trafficked, having been reported by their family, and we're missing that opportunity to rescue them.
Of course.
And that's why I said, okay, that process has to be there. The opportunity to check in with that Home Office database has to be there, but it has to be there for the right reasons. So you have your process, but it needs to be ethical, and let's have a process that checks out that it is ethical.
That's so important. I think, gosh, what I'm really taking from this is there's so many layers to it, isn't there? And there's so many different viewpoints, and it's not just cut and dry. Like
it's not binary, it's not black and white.
No, they're right, they're wrong.
Multifaceted.
Of course.
Shades, many shades.
Because exactly what you just said about that person being trafficked, I didn't even really think about that. And, you know, the last thing you want is a horror story where somebody's being trafficked and they've literally encountered the police, but that's been missed.
Yeah, because the police didn't dare take the fingerprints and check, because You know, I've said you're not allowed to do it, it's racist.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, you know, like you say, those rules are in place, but there's still, we need to hold people to account and question them, make sure they're being done fairly. But there's also that other side of the coin, which is like why they were there in the beginning, making sure they're not being abused. Okay, really interesting. And I guess, so a little bit about your kind of, you know, personal career, and I guess how you've kind of come to where you are. So Mel has told me a little bit about you. She's told me that you've done some work before, and your kind of work with diversity and some of the awards that you've won. And I guess that, you know, I'd really love to hear about that, and also just, you know, how did you first hear about the D-list, and, you know, kind of what made you want to get involved? So your kind of experience when it comes to the D-list and diversity.
So diversity, inclusion, fairness, call it what you like, it's something that's really innate to me and I'm really passionate about. And I think that it really stems from my lived experience, my childhood trauma of childhood sexual abuse, because that really, really impacted on me and my life, which I didn't acknowledge. I didn't tell anyone that had happened to me till I was 45 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And it was impacting in all sorts of negative ways. I think that I wasn't the leader that I wanted to be. I was very defensive. I was using shields to protect myself all the time. I wasn't managing my emotions. I'd swear, I'd raise my voice. I didn't shout at people, but I'd raise my voice in situations. I look back, I feel really embarrassed about that, but I was leaking. I was in distress and I was leaking. And it was not until I acknowledged my mental health, which obviously is a disability and is part of the inclusion agenda. It wasn't until I acknowledged my mental health and acknowledged that I had been a victim of a serious crime and started to talk about that I began the journey to survivorhood. And when I realised that my difference was something that I needed to acknowledge, not just for myself, but with other people. So I started telling people at Touchstone, where I was chief exec, I started talking about my lived experience and my journey to where I'd got to. I began to realise how powerful it was, that it was both healing for me to be able to talk to people about how I'd got to where I'd got to emotionally and as a leader, but also other people then approached me and started to talk about their differences, and that might be about menopause, that might be about neurodiversity, that might be about race, gender identity, that might be about a range of things, or intersectional, many things. But because I was talking as a black woman about my lived experience as something that was just so unspoken of for so many, it freed people up to begin to talk about their difference. And we began a journey together, a big adventure of really understanding that a person's lived experience is their special power, it's their superpower, and you can exploit it for good, or you can use it against them, and you lose that opportunity of that whole person coming to work and being the best person that they could possibly be. And I became a leader that I was proud of. I understood the power of my lived experience and being open and honest with my staff about who I was, the journey that I'd been on, my mental health. I experienced really sometimes quite debilitating depression. I had panic attacks. I still do, but not as bad at all. I can manage it so much better because I'm who I'm supposed to be now. I live my life according to my values, and I wasn't living my life according to my values because I was living a lie. I was pretending to be somebody. I was Alison, the superwoman, and actually I had been a victim, and I couldn't become a survivor until I'd bridged that gap. And when I did that for myself, I created the environment where others could do it for themselves. Yeah. And Touchstone became the most safe working environment that I have ever encountered in my life. Wow. I miss it every day, but also we then became a really inclusive, safe place for our service users. And winning awards was a symptom of that. It became easy to win those awards because it's like, well, we do that. And so we're filling in all these application forms. It's like, oh, this is easy. And we just kept on winning. Yeah. But we didn't seek out the awards. Yeah. We sought out the good practice, and we wanted to test ourselves against other organisations through these processes because we wanted to get better and better, and all the time, what more can we do to improve so that people coming into Touchstone, either as a member of staff, a visitor, a service user, a stakeholder, feel the love, feel the warmth, feel the welcome, and are able to be their whole selves. And that's how it started, and that's how it ended.
That is so important as well. And I think just it really kind of hones in on that, really living your truth, basically.
Exactly.
And, it really does open you up for all that freedom. I guess just really quickly on that, do you think you were consciously aware at the time, pre-45, that was holding you back?
No, wouldn't go there, wouldn't accept it, wouldn't acknowledge it. I just knew I was in rage. I was absolutely I was in such pain. I was in such distress. My 30s were quite good, really. I'd got divorced from a very violent relationship, a lot of domestic abuse, a lot of controlling, coercive behaviour. So I felt free in my 30s, got into a new relationship. I was going to the gym and I felt like I got my life back. Late 30s, early 40s, things started to impact me, and by my mid-40s I was in a really dark place. I'd been in a really dark place in my 20s when I was living in this very violent relationship, but also I'd remembered the abuse in my 20s. I'd really managed to ferret it away deep, and it came back to me in my 20s, and I was suicidal. It was a horrible time, but I had 2 little children and I couldn't go because they were there and they needed me, and I couldn't leave them in the relationship that I was in. But in my 30s, I felt like I was in, I was cock of the world. I had no problems, but you can't outrun your problems, you can't outrun your mental health, you can't outrun the reality of trauma on your life, and it comes and gets you, and it got me in my 40s. And I was in crisis, and it was because I went, finally, my trustees, who probably thought, my God, we need to do something with this woman, but we're all scared of me. Everyone was scared of me. I wasn't really a very nice person. I wanted to be, but my behaviours, belied what I wanted. They sent me to go get coaching. I went and got an ILM level 7 coaching qualification, ironic, because I was not at one imbalance or anything like that, but I had this coaching with this amazing woman. And I realised that first session, that child, she was still there. She was sat there on my shoulder, crying, and I wouldn't let her go. And I had to let her go because I couldn't move forward. I couldn't live my life while she was clinging to me. And I had to see her, and I had to see her pain. And, it was really hard. And I had to acknowledge that my relationship with my mother was dysfunctional because I hated her, because I blamed her. I blamed her for not keeping me safe. And everything... we were in a room, me and my mum together, and you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. I knew it, she knew it, we didn't talk about it. But when I'd been through that coaching and I understood I had a choice, I could forgive her. I could talk to her about it and tell her how I felt and make her feel shit. Or I could forgive her. And you know what? I chose to forgive her. And that day, that little girl, she smiled, she waved. She went. And Alison came up and she moved forward. And I think about her sometimes. She's not gone always. Sometimes she's there. But it's never in the way that it was. It's not as a darkness. It's as a memory. And, but Rumi once said, didn't he? The wound is the place where the light enters.
Definitely. And and firstly, thank you so much for speaking about this, because I think it's so important. And I think that when you do, like you say, it allows other people to also speak about these things and, have that confidence and see where you are now. And I think, on that kind of forgiveness piece, there's this quote that I really like, which says, you have to forgive everybody, including yourself. And I think that's the bit that allows you to kind of move forward. So, thank you so much for that.
And I should just say, my mum died last year and I had no regrets. Because I'd loved her. Because I'd made that choice, I'd properly loved her. I didn't always like her, she wasn't a likeable person, but that was nothing to do with my past. But I properly loved her, and I honoured my relationship with her, and I had no regrets.
Amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I guess, you can clearly see how all of those things have led you to who you are and to the work that you do in these spaces. And I think that for me, it's really honing in about the importance of having a different kind of people who inhabit these kind of spaces in police, in local government, all the rest of it. Why do you think that it's important that we see more diversity in industries such as police and local government, and so we're having these, like you say, different lived experiences coming through?
It's really important that you get the best team. It's important that you bring in the talent, the assets, that exist in all communities. And whether you're black, white, brown, gay, straight, trans, non-binary, Muslim, Baha'i, Christian, Sikh, we are all gifted people in different ways. We bring different strengths, we bring different challenges, thoughts, and we can make an organisation great or not. But if you want to get trust, if you're a public facing company like the police, like a local government, if you want to build those connections with the communities you serve, if you want that trust and confidence, seeing somebody who looks like you within the ranks of policing, within your local government, within the NHS, that brings trust and confidence. And when you've got things that happen, like the murders of Nicole Smallman and Bieber Henry, and the police then didn't look for them because looking for black missing people doesn't seem to be as important as looking for white missing people, and then those police officers took photographs and shared them on a WhatsApp. It becomes that happened then, and that's about that force at that time. It's not about all policing, because here in West Yorkshire we can see black faces, we can see black women, we can see how they treat us, we have that connection and we have that trust. So it's important that employers, whether that's policing, NHS, another, ASDA, whoever, IBM, whoever, you've got to have a diverse workforce, not only because it's the best thing for your business, but also because it's the best thing for the customers, for your stakeholders. It'll build that trust, and it'll mean that your business is more successful in the longer term. But ethically, it's also the right thing to do, and you can look yourself in the mirror. And when, like me, you get to the end and you look back, you think, I did okay, I can go now.
Exactly. Alison, do you know what? I feel like I can talk to you all day about, I was like, I want to get on to more, I want to ask more and more. I'm going to ask you one final question, which is that what one piece of advice would you like to leave our D-listers with when it comes to growing in their career as diverse individuals?
You've got to love yourself. For a long time when I was a child, teenager, in my 20s, woman in my 20s, I was waiting for everyone to love me, and if only this would happen, he would love me. If only that would happen, they would love me. You've got to love yourself. So start with self, because we are all beautiful people. We're talented, we're gorgeous, we're wonderful. We contribute so much. And at the end of the day, if we can't love ourselves, then how can anybody else love us? It starts with self. So get yourself caring. Find those people who fuel us up, who give us all that warmth and that love that we need. Avoid those detractors, those people who make us feel rubbish. They're not our friends. Do things for you that make you feel good. Learn from your mistakes, but don't beat yourself up about it. At the end of the day, forgive yourself. Give yourself permission to learn and move forward. And at the end of the day, live the life you're supposed to live. Don't tread on others thinking they don't matter. Everyone matters, and you matter too. Remember that, you matter too.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to be taking that on my train home. That's going to fill me up for the rest of the evening. Thank you so much for your time, Alison. I really, really appreciate it. And I think you've given some really great pearls. And I think more than that, you are such an inspiration in terms of not only just what you're doing now, I think with, the policing and the central government, but I think all of your entire history and your journey, which is, like I said, has led you here. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking.